Hello, YouTube, and welcome to Fat Beans Coffee Lab. Who am I? Well, I'm the Bean Man. What is this? This is my place of peace. So join me tonight as we do a little bit of light experimentation in the art of the bean science. As I said, I am the Bean Man. We are streaming here on YouTube, which is an honor for me. I primarily stream on Twitch, but the Bean Man's always looking for experimentation. So we're always looking to do something new. I'm just going to be tweaking a couple of things here as, like I said, I don't stream a whole lot on YouTube, but that could definitely change as I've been getting a lot of views on my video and a lot of questions. I prefer to live stream over, say editing videos. It's just kind of my style. I just kind of like answering questions, going on the fly, kind of letting things kind of come as they go. I have chopped up a couple of my streams and turned them into videos. And those have gotten a little bit of hits. There is a vast roasting community out there, and anything I can add to that zeitgeist, well, perfect. And also, I'm looking to learn too. And the thing about making videos is not only do you get to watch yourself bumble around and make mistakes, but you also get to connect yourself to a community. And that's what really this is all about for me, is just identifying and connecting with a roasting community as I try to master the art of the bean. So tonight we're going to be doing a couple of different things. We're going to be making a cold brew that I normally do, and we also are going to be working on our Behmore. Sorry for the kind of clunky start here. That's the beautiful part about live streams, is you kind of are flying as you go here, building the airplane as you go. Let's see. Well, let's get our audio fixed. Looks like everything's good. Yeah, I'm not. There, I think that's it. Got all the kinks worked out. So now we're good to go. All right. Anyway, we'll be doing a cold brew recipe, and we'll also be working on the Behmore tonight, as I want to get some captured image of it, because I do have a couple of little hacks that I like to do on the Behmore that I'd like to share with some of the other Behmore roasters out there. But to start, we are actually going to brew ourselves a little cup of coffee here using a mocha pot. Now, when I stream, I usually like to do so with a cup of coffee. I find it makes everything that much more pleasurable. So we will make ourselves a mocha pot while we are getting ready for our stream. If you've never seen a mocha pot before, it actually comes in two pieces. There's a water reservoir. So this is the mocha pot. Comes in two pieces. Got a water reservoir here. And this is actually where the brewed coffee is going to go. There's also a third piece. It is a basket, and that's where we're going to stick our grounds. So what we're going to do is we're going to stick 200, I'm probably about 208 degrees Celsius, and kind of lost my footing on what I was doing there. Filled it a little too full, so you only want to really go up to the exhaust valve. Oh, making a mess. So you only really want to fill it up to this exhaust valve line here. Nowhere past, and that is actually where steam is going to escape from. Then you'll insert the coffee into the basket. You don't want to pack it down real tight. As you can see, it's a kind of a medium coarse grind here. You want to pack it down, leave it nice and airy. Set that in here. And then I've heard, pray tell, of people who use an AeroPress filter in. So we're going to try that tonight. I'm going to slip the filter in right here. And an effort to kind of give us a little extra filtration from the fines. And we'll see. You never know. All right. Now we're going to flip that onto our hot plate here. Probably could use a lot better hot plate, but you do with what you got. Let's see if we can't give you a little bit of a bird's eye. How about that? Now we wait. So what we want that water to do is heat up, and the steam is going to start coming up through this little funnel here. Eventually the pressure that's going to be built up down here in the reservoir is going to be too much, and it's going to force our water up through this gasket. But the water's not going to come clear because it's going to actually pass through the coffee. That is going to give us filtered coffee, but it's going to be coffee it's going to be water that's going to be extracted through the coffee. So we'll let it sit here and do its thing. I think if I had a nicer hot plate, it might be a little bit quicker, but what are you going to do? So we'll wait for that. Start bubbling over. The coffee that I'm using is actually the same roast level that I'm going to use for my cold brew. It's a dark, medium dark, more so dark. Took it about 20 seconds past second crack. Guatemalan coffee. So I figured, why not give it a spin in our mocha pot? Got a little bit of noise starting up, so I think things would be a lot quicker if we had a little bit more efficient hot plate. All right, here's second. You're going to start to see the extracted coffee, a really dark, almost rust-colored crema start to extract. Get some light hints of steam. Nope, there you go. So some of that early crema. I don't know if I had it on tight enough. Looks like I'm losing a little steam. I think the problem with the AeroPress filter is that it didn't get a super tight seal. You live and you learn. Probably should have put it inside of the gasket. All right, and I'm going to take this out, quickly run it over the water, over some cold water over here. And that's just going to put an end to the brewing process. Turn our hot plate off. Let that cool down a little bit. Grab ourselves a trusty mug. Cheers. And that is some very well extracted coffee. Now it looks to be, get about 2 pretty good shots there. And just using the old smelloscope, it's really very, I guess the best word to say is strong coffee. That's really well balanced. Not bitter. A nice nuttiness to it. Now, since it is nighttime and I'm trying to enjoy a little bit of a hot drink as much as I am, enjoying the caffeine side of things, I'm going to go ahead and top it off with a little bit of hot water. Make it an Americano. It's good. It's a good Americano. Real good. Ooh, that is smooth, very chocolatey, a little nutty. I think they're excellent. Excellent. That's dynamite. All right. So, there you have it. That is how we do mocha pot. All right. So next order of business we have to accomplish tonight is going to be working on our cold brew. Now, I did this cold brew recipe. I did this cold brew brewing on Monday, so about 4 days ago. Usually like to let it degas a couple of days longer, but no big deal. Now this system here is called the Toddy 5-gallon. Let's see if I can work our angle here. So this is a Toddy 5-gallon cold brew system. If you're asking yourself, that just looks like a 5-gallon bucket. Well, that's because it is. You can buy these filter bags that come with it that just sit in here. The thing that makes the Toddy kind of unique is it comes with this table tray and spigot that do help kind of clear out the fines a little bit in the coffee. Other than that, it's really just an overpriced 5-gallon bucket. Now, I'm not going to make a full cold brew recipe tonight. I'm actually only going to do about, let's say a little under a half. I'm going to use 2 2 pounds of dark roast Guatemalan coffee, and about 7 liters total of water. That will give me right around a gallon of concentrate, which is probably going to be more than enough for me. I also think spilled a little bit here. Spilled a little bit of coffee. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and pour some water over top of our cold brew. And this is just lightly filtered water, nothing special. And the goal here is just to saturate our grounds. When you have a concentrated amount of grounds like this in a bag, if I were to tie the bag off before wetting it, I would kind of risk dry pockets forming in the coffee. So just to make sure that the water can flow easily and nothing gets compact in the middle, I like to pour about a half a gallon of water over the coffee, thus allowing all the grounds to become moist. And again, that will kind of help in the brewing process, just loosen things up a little bit, avoid any sort of a dry pocket system. Then we just throw some string around the bag. Tie our bag off with string here. And then just finish it off with water. Now we just pour the remaining amount of the water in. That's a gallon. We'll go grab about 3 more liters to top it off with. And that really shows just how new we are to the whole YouTube side of things. I think I just did about 30 minutes and I had it as unpublished. So, we live and we learn. We live and we learn. All right. So now all we got to do is drop this in the fridge for about 24 hours. And then we'll have a good concentrate of cold brew ready to go. Mix that 1 part water, 1 part concentrate for a very delicious treat. Go ahead and just set this aside for now. All right, well, let's try that again. So what happened was we went ahead and did the first 30 minutes of the stream and forgot to put it on public. So what are you going to do? Like I said, I'm new to the YouTube portion of this. But anyway, welcome in. I am the Bean Man. This is Fat Beans Coffee Lab. Good to have you guys in tonight. We stream coffee. I primarily am a home roaster, but every now and then the Bean Man does purvey into the dark arts of brewing. I'm by no means what would I call a very variable contrast brewer, but I do enjoy a good homemade cup of coffee. We're going to be doing a little bit of Behmore roasting tonight. The Behmore is a very introductory model to roasting machines. It is probably where a lot of home roasters start. It's got a incredibly small footprint, which is very advantageous. It can be put underneath a cabinet. You can roast right underneath the stove. It, is, like I said, it's where a lot of people that are thinking about wanting to become roasters, they generally find themselves to a machine like this for many different reasons. One, it roasts coffee, and it actually does it pretty good. I mean, the consistency of a batch is hard to beat. And you also can do, it says up to a pound of coffee. Now, I've personally never gone that much before. Even though it says it can do a pound, something says it can do and what it can execute efficiently are two different things. So it cannot do a pound of coffee, but it can do, let's say, a half a pound all the way up to 3/4 a pound pretty effectively. Now, what I'm gauging the effectiveness off of is how quickly can it get the coffee to first crack. Coffee is not just roasted once it turns brown and it gets to first crack. You need to be able to preserve some flavors, and to do that, you have to get to first crack in a reasonable amount of time. Now, the debate about what reasonable is, can kind of go back and forth. The best numbers I've heard is somewhere between 6 minutes and 15 minutes at the furthest, and that's only to first crack. Really, 15 minutes, you should be wrapping up your entire roast. That is a long time for a bean that is filled with moisture to be, sitting and gathering heat. If it goes too slow, all the moisture just kind of peters out, and then the chemical reactions aren't really that aggressive. Acetic acids, glucose, sucrose, all the things that make the delicious flavors of coffee just never really have the opportunity to kind of come together. It's like cooking. Like, let's say you were going to cook meat, you really aren't going to want to do it really, really slow. Big Chief, what flavor profiles do you seek in the winter? So as far as like coffee that I drink, winter does play a big role on the kind of profiles that I'm seeking out. I generally find myself gravitating more towards dark roasts, specifically from, I guess, the Indonesia, Sumatran, Java. I've been doing a lot of Papua New Guinea. I tend to like dark roasts, but every now and then to kind of give me a little taste of spring and summer, I will sprinkle in maybe a medium light Ethiopian, a medium light Kenyan, just to kind of kick myself out of a seasonal depression. But I tend to like a bolder, more dark roast profile, and I found that my customers that are ordering coffee from me tend to like darker roast too. That kind of comes to the second issue with the Behmore. The Behmore does light roast coffee, medium roast coffee very, very well. It kind of falls short when you're trying to roast something dark because in that golden time between 6 minutes and 15 minutes, the Behmore tends to get to that first crack a little bit on the latter side. So when you try to, move it to a second crack, you're talking about really, really prolonged roast times. But for the most part, if it's a first introduction to roasting, it gives you a good idea of all the processes of coffee. And like I said, if you are just looking to get a small batch, medium light roast, the Behmore can do medium light roast, small batch all day long without any sort of problem. So same, I know it's something about the bold, rich flavors of dark roasts and medium roasts tend to fit the season really well. And you get, I don't know if it's just coincidental, but some of the best Sumatrans, Papua New Guineas, even a lot of Indian monsoon coffee really starts to arrive this time of year. So it's just kind of serendipitous, as it were. There is a lot of Ethiopians that are starting to hit the market. So I think the call to spring is in the air. So kind of give you just a quick look before I start roasting. It is essentially a drum roaster. It has this basket-like drum, and somebody forgot to give it a nice... You vacuum everything, and then you forget to vacuum the inside. But it's got a drum, a chaff collector, and I'll give you a quick kind of zoom in here. Oh, man, yeah. Don't think... Is there a buzz? I don't know. Looks like that's a Twitch thing only, man. Big Chief is 100% calculated. Well, that's good, Big Chief. So clearly, Big Chief, you have you're a little bit familiar with my Twitch show. What's your Twitch handle, just so I can get a little bit, kind of put a name to a face here. As we're doing things on YouTube, everything's so different. I did the first 30 minutes of this YouTube broadcast to nobody. I had it set to unpublish. I didn't know that publishing your broadcast was a thing. All right, so you can see here, there's two heating elements in here that will do the primary job of roasting the coffee. This coffee is pretty much, I would say, 80 to 90% a conduction coffee, meaning the heat from the heating elements will be heating the coffee. There's not a ton of airflow in this machine. There's an exhaust fan that kicks on after about 7 to 8 minutes of the roast, but it does very little for roasting the coffee. I got post notification, so I know. So that is an inside look at it. I guess help kind of shine some light on some things. So that is going to roast the coffee in total. Now, I can sit here and kind of go through all the features of the Behmore, but I think for this roast, I kind of want to go through all the little hacks that I have come up with to really stay within that 6 to 15 minute window, meaning that I try to, there's a lot of little things, a lot of little tweaks that I've made to this machine to get it up to first crack in a reasonable amount of time. And then from there, we can do a little bit of profiling. So over the course, the last couple of weeks, I've started to collect some bits and bobs of coffee. And that's kind of what led me to say, hey, let's do some Behmore roasting. Because the Behmore does make some exquisite coffee. You just got to really get familiar with the machine. So I've got some Bali coffee here. Let's see how much I have. Got about 400 grams. So that's about 1/8 of a pound. Now that's a little bit more than I like to do, but it's all the coffee I have left. So I'm going to do a little bit bigger batch than I normally do. Hopefully we can get it up to something manageable. So we have some Balinese coffee, or some coffee from Bali. It's about 3/4 of a pound. And we're going to try to get it up to about a medium roast. Now, there are a couple of things that I do to try to expedite the roasting process a little bit. The first thing I do with the Behmore is I like to preheat it. Now, all the preheating for this machine is really going to do is it's going to heat up the metal, and that will save you about a minute or two. But when we're talking about trying to fit our roast in a manageable amount of time, a minute or two could be, the entire roast. I've done with preheats, without preheats, and I've found by preheating the machine, I can speed up my roast, like I said, by about a minute or two. Some people say, the Behmore was not meant to be preheated. I just like to get it preheated enough that the metal inside the machine is no longer really needing to take a bunch of heat. That way the coffee beans can really be the primary forks when we drop it in. We got a new viewer. Well, who knows? Like I said, this is really just a trial run here on the old YouTube. So welcome in. I'm always kind of interested in what we could do as far as YouTube streaming. We're so new to, we're so small in both streaming games that it's not really like Twitch provides us a bump over anything else. The one unique thing that YouTube gives us is that my videos, a lot of my old streams I put on YouTube, and they still get hit pretty often on YouTube. I think there is a much larger roasting community that can be found on YouTube, at least initially through my videos. So I'm always curious as if this is where this is kind of might be a good avenue to stream from. Carson Rogers, hey, what's up? My wife and I were just watching you on the other Behmore video, trying to get into roasting. Subbed your channel. Thanks for the helpful content. Hey, no problem. Like I was saying, I'm more of a live streamer than I am of a person who makes videos. I'm just starting to get into the art of making videos, editing and doing all that. I'm a lot more comfortable on the live stream. I came from the Twitch world, but like I said, there are people who have been watching my Behmore videos and my Bullet video. So I figured I would start doing a couple of streams here and there on YouTube and see if there's a more of a demand over here. It's half a dozen one way for me. So if there's value here, that's where I'll come. We are doing a Behmore. If you're trying to get into roasting, a Behmore is a great first tier roaster. It has a very small footprint. It can roast coffee pretty consistently, meaning all of the coffee is going to be at the same roast level as the rest of the coffee. I have come up with a couple of little hacks that I do just to try to speed up the roast a little bit more. I tend to think that once you get past about 15, 16 minutes into roasting, you are losing a lot of valuable flavor. So I'm just going to do a couple of demonstrations on the Behmore tonight of how I like to roast coffee on it to get what I consider to be the most out of it. The first thing I do is I preheat it to 200 degrees. And then I put the coffee in. This just allows the inside body of the machine to get heated up a little bit. It's going to speed our roast up a little bit more. The next thing I do is I set it to the maximum amount of time possible, because the last thing you want to do is get a good roast going and not be able to finish the roast. I do that by setting it to 1 pound, no matter how much I put in there, and P5, which just gives you the maximum amount of time, which will be 23 minutes. Now, we don't want to do a full 23 minutes, but we want to make sure we get the coffee to the roast profile that we want to get it to. So we're going to start this machine. And the other thing, because this is a Behmore 2000, we're going to speed up the drum. The Behmore is primarily a conduction roaster, so the more exposure the beans can get to the hot surface of the drum and the heating elements in the back, the faster it's going to roast. The last thing that I've started to do is I actually will put, and these are just whetstones, I'll actually slip a prop underneath the machine. That is going to force the beans back towards the heating element, and that will allow, again, more of that conduction heating. There is hardly any airflow in the Behmore, so you really are relying primarily on conduction heat, which is not the case for most roasters. Most roasters, you can get anywhere up to almost 70 to 80% is from convection. But the airflow in the Behmore is extremely limited. You can see it kind of just tossing around in there. Now we're in about a minute and a half, and early on, what I like to do is just start checking how much temperature is being picked up. Now, the temperature inside the Behmore is a little bit misleading, because all this is telling you is how hot it is inside of the machine. There's a thermocouple that falls on the side, and this is just telling you what is the air temperature inside the Behmore. It doesn't really tell you anything about the actual temperature of the bean mass, because there's no thermocouple in the bean. But we can assume if the beans are inside of here, we can get a good idea of what the rise of temperature is. So after about 2 minutes, I start keeping track of this number. And what I'm looking for is about 15 to 16 degrees Fahrenheit gain about every minute. That kind of tells us that the synergy of the coffee is at a good stage. Again, that's one of the many fallbacks or the follies of the Behmore, is you really can't track your variables too well. But you do get some variables that you have. You have time, and you have this very slight temperature that you can go off of. Also, you can adjust your intensity. So we have it on 100%, meaning the heating element is on 100% of the time. And we also know that the fan won't kick on until 7 minutes and 30 seconds into the roast. With no airflow, is smoke in the chamber an issue? So there is a smoke suppression system inside the Behmore. It works pretty good. I'm not 100% sure on what the science is behind the smoke suppression. I would recommend, and what's kind of nice is it's so small. When I first started roasting with the machine, I would do it underneath my stove. The smoke is not bad. If you go for a darker roast, the smoke is going to be quite a bit more pervasive than if you were just to take it to first crack or like 30 seconds past first crack. I have some external exhaust I have in my basement that I primarily use for my larger roaster. I'll kick that on, but the smoke can be a little bit of an issue, and hopefully I'll be able to show that to you. Coffee roasting is smoky, I can tell you that. Right. One thing, and this is kind of the other frustrating thing about the Behmore, so I'll point it out now that it's come up. One issue with the Behmore is that all of these numbers mean a different thing. There are presets and then there are values. When it's flashing, that means that you're in manual mode. This is 100%, P4 is 75, P3 is 50, P2 I believe is like 30%, and P1 is like 25%. They're also presets. I've never really got into the presets. I can't really speak to them. I've always manually roasted on this machine. But if you don't push manual, P5 is not actually what you think it is. So we'll just have to make some adjustments with this as we go. It does have kind of a hypnotic quality to it. Now, there are people who do roast who swear, that you got to roast outside. You can roast the Behmore inside. I'm in my basement, which is a great place to roast coffee. It's an unfinished basement. But like I said, the first probably 20 or 30 batches I did with this Behmore, I was primarily doing right on my stovetop. And as long as you got some sort of good exhaust system, it's not too bad. Like I said, coffee as a whole is smoky. The other issue with the Behmore, you really have no access to the coffee. You can smell. It's a very good way to kind of train the aromatic value of coffee. Like right now, the coffee is taking on a sweet aroma, which tells us that chemical reactions are starting to take place in the coffee, which means we have dried the coffee out, and now we have entered into what is called the pre-development phase. All right, pre-development phase. Other roasters allow you to actually extract the coffee, but since the coffee is trapped in a basket, we really can't get our hands on it. So. Now we've reached 7 minutes and 30 seconds. There we go. Seven minutes and 30 seconds into the roast, and a small fan kicks on. Now, it does this for safety reasons, but it's kind of a bummer because once that fan kicks on, it's a lot harder to get the roast kind of to the level that you want it to be at. And we're probably going to end up doing 2 roasts tonight because I can already tell that this roast is going to be a little bit finicky. But that's just the beauty of roasting coffee, especially on these really more low-end machines. You kind of just got to roll with the punches. Yeah, that's going to be problematic. So we are already 9 minutes in to our roast, and we are, what I would say, we're probably about at least 3 more minutes away from first crack. That's going to put us about 12 minutes for first crack, and that can be a little bit frustrating. Yeah, we never were even able to get a good heat on this. Big Chief mentions earlier that Twitch is a little bit more user-friendly for streaming and watching. I would have to agree with that sentiment. I think as far as streaming, I think YouTube is just such, they've dominated videos for so long. They're kind of stuck in that model. But Twitch is so much more user-friendly, so much more experience-friendly. I wish we could combine, the rich, fertile ground of people who, roasters, and bring them over to Twitch. We've had some people that have discovered us on YouTube and came over to Twitch. But what I find, and it's kind of the same thing for me. I had no idea what Twitch was. Obviously, I know what Twitch is now. It's a streaming source, but for the most part, no dice. Yeah, so we're 12 minutes. And like I said, we are just not making any ground at all. So we did about 3/4 a pound in here, and it's just being real stubborn. So I'm just going to go ahead and plan my next roast while I'm standing here. While I'm waiting, I got some Kenyan. We'll do some of that as well. See if we can't get a little bit more of a quicker roast here. That kind of sums it up, huh? Yep. Like I said, we are probably, the internal temperature of the coffee is probably about 188 degrees Celsius. Generally, coffee starts to hit its first crack at about 200 degrees Celsius. We are Ooh, approaching 14 minutes. Remember I said, if you remember early on, I said I like it between 6 and 15 minutes. Anything past 15 minutes and it's getting long. And I think we're going to hit right on that 15 minutes. So the batch was a little bit bigger than I like to do. I think what happens is that the Behmore, you can tell it's got a little bit of an exhaust. It keeps knocking my sign down. Because it keeps knocking my sign down. Come on, all right. We should be hearing our first cracks anytime. This is the exhaust temperature. So this says the gas that's exiting the machine is 406 degrees Fahrenheit. At 406 degrees Fahrenheit, that's generally where coffee usually starts to gauge in its first crack. So we should be hearing some early pops here anytime soon. Again, we don't actually know what the bean temperature is, but we can look at air temperatures and exhaust temperatures to get kind of a general idea. There's the first couple of pops. Okay, I'm going to call that first crack. I'd like to get a couple of concentric pops. Okay, there we go. So what we're going to do is actually cut the power down to 50%, slow the drum down, and we also are going to reset a timer. This is just when first crack happens. 3 minutes should probably bring us somewhere up to about second crack. Now for this profile, I want to kind of just take a look, smell the coffee from what I can smell after about 2 minutes of development time. As we don't want to take this coffee all the way to second crack, we're just looking for a nice, healthy medium roast. And then we'll get to check out the real modifications of this roaster. So we're at first crack. Took way too long. I said I did about 3/4 a pound here because I just wanted to get rid of the rest of this coffee. It took about 15 minutes to get the first crack. Now that's partially because it's really cold, and that does have an effect on the Behmore. The heaters around are probably drawing the energy source. It has such a such a small roasting element that the slightest change in power supply will actually slow the roast down considerably. But also, I didn't have it set on manual mode until about 3 or 4 minutes in. All things considered, we did get it up to first crack. It does look incredibly even, but my fear is that I don't know if it ever really got a good synergy attached to it. We've let it develop for about 2 minutes now. That should bring it right to a nice happy medium. I'm going to go about 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And then I'm going to hit cool, and I'm going to let it cool down for 30 seconds. Now, you could just let it sit, and the machine will bring it to room temperature. The only thing it's cooling down is a small exhaust fan in the back of the machine. That can be somewhat problematic because the coffee is actually still roasting in there. It's turned the heating element off, but it is slowly affecting, which I have found kind of kills a lot of the acetic acid and like the aromatics of the coffee. So what I usually elect to do is externally cool. Now you can externally cool the coffee in many different ways. You could pass it between two colanders. I've used a cardboard box and a shop vac. There's a lot of different things you can do to cool the coffee down. I happen to have an external cooling tray on my other roaster, so I'm going to use that. Now, most of you won't have that available to you, but it's kind of sweet. And there is the finished product. So you can definitely tell that it gives you a very even roast all the way through. I mean, there's a nice expansion on the bean. So what we got to first crack and then development time, once we got to first crack, I mean, it did a really nice job roasting the coffee. Only fear is, again, I don't really like the coffee just sitting in heat for that long. Now, there are still some adjustments we can make to get that first crack time down, and I'm going to show those adjustments with my next roast. Primarily, there's a couple of things you can do, especially when you get pulled, when your first crack times get pulled way too far out. First thing, just lower the batch size. We did about 3/4 a pound. We're going to lower the batch size to about 1/2 pound. That is going to really speed up the roast. The machine is now heated up. You should probably go and bring it all the way to room temperature. But since we're going to do back-to-back roasts, I'm going to try to catch it at about 100 degrees. We'll preheat it to about 200 degrees. And from there, we'll try to, that's where we'll pick up our next roast. So we will preheat it. We'll have smaller, and we're going to throw all the heat that we possibly can at the coffee until it reaches first crack. So this next batch, I'll kind of just go through. Okay, so we roasted coffee. We didn't get it kind of the speed that we wanted to. And if you really want to maximize the flavors of the Behmore, I would say you really want to stick to that, in that 6 to 15 minute window. So I will show you how I kind of have made some hacks to get to first crack by about 9 minutes and really be pulling the coffee after about 10 and a half minutes. You get some real flavorful coffee. It get a lot better roast. I think this coffee will be good. Just think it might be a little bit flat. And again, the coffee bean would suggest that it's got a little life in it. So who knows? You can't judge coffee until you taste it. You got to drink it to really know what you got. But who knows? might not be too bad. Okay. The other issue, kind of the big bummer, the chaff collection of the Behmore is virtually non-existent. I'll give you a look at kind of what I'm talking about. So let's see, it's about 130 degrees. That's probably good. So with the Behmore, you're kind of at the mercy of, you got to get in and clean it every time you roast. So every single time you roast, you got to get in there and clean all of that chaff out, because the chaff will start to blow around. If it sits on the heating element, it has a chance of catching fire. I've been roasting coffee for about 3 years, and the closest I've ever come to burning my basement down is on this machine. What had happened is I started doing the external cooling, which means I pulled the coffee out of the machine, but I did not. I don't know if you noticed, but when I pulled the external coffee, I actually let it sit and cool down for 30 seconds. I used to not do that. I used to just pull it out. Well, what had happened is that the chaff would get thrown into the air, so it hadn't had enough time to settle to the bottom. So it was getting thrown into the air of the machine, and it was resting on the back of these heating elements. All of that chaff started on fire, and I thought I was going to lose the machine. I was able to get it out pretty efficiently without any sort of scorching or burning. But you really, really got to watch out for chaff. It'll go up in smoke real quick. All right, so we are going to do one more roast. This time we are going to do a Kenyan Coffee, and we are just going to probably do about a 30 to 45 second development time, so a light roast coffee. So there is the Kenyan. We are only going to do 2 pounds half a pound this time. All in an effort to get our first crack time a little bit quicker. Half a pound is not much coffee, but I mean, if you were just drinking coffee by yourself, you could probably get by with a half a pound in about a week. The Bean Man burned through half a pound pretty quick. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to preheat the machine to 200 degrees Fahrenheit again. There we go. We'll pull it out. Okay, we're going to set maximum time here. Push start. We're going to speed up the drum. We are also going to set it into manual mode. So if it's blinking, it's in manual mode, and we have it set to 100% power. All of this is kind of set to speed the roast up to the maximum amount of time. Can't really see the beans tossed around in there. Let's give you that look. Okay, so what we're going to do, we also notice that we have it up on blocks. This is going to force the coffee back towards the heating element, which hopefully speed it up a little bit more. All right. So initially, what we're going to be hoping to do is get the coffee as hot as we possibly can during the drying phase and the pre-development phase. Try to get up to first crack by about 9.5, 10 minutes. Then we'll just put a very, very light development time or profile on it, as this Kenyan coffee tends to be the best and more of a lighter roast. Yeah, so we're already at 240 degrees, and we're just 2 minutes in. Again, that is not how hot the coffee is. It is just how hot the machine is inside. But it does give us a good idea of how much it's rising. So we'll check it here in a minute and see how much heat the machine has picked up. All right, so we're a minute in. Yeah, so that gained about 17 degrees. That's pretty good synergy. We're looking for about between 15 and 17 degrees. If we can keep that up, that really means that the beans are absorbing a lot of heat. Again, I can't stress this enough. We don't actually know what the bean temperature is because we can't get anything to the mass of the beans. But by looking at this temperature, we can get an idea of, how quickly is the temperature rising in the machine. And since the beans are inside the machine and they're affecting the overall temperature, we can kind of correlate that. We're at 157 a minute ago. So hopefully around 173, 175. And look at that, 175. So another 17 degrees. So we're gaining about 17 degrees Fahrenheit every minute. That's pretty on track to what I've seen for first crack arriving right about 9 minutes, 9.5 minutes. So everything is on target there. Okay, so now we're at 291. So 175, 290. So now we raised about 16 degrees there. Still got a good synergy. So although we don't know, we do know that every minute the internal temperature of the machine has gone up by about 16 to 17 degrees. That essentially tells us that the beans are, absorbing a lot of heat there, which is a good thing. They're not cooling the machine down, which would be a bad thing. We're almost about 6 minutes into the roast, and we've hit 300 degrees. Now, one thing we never got to in the last roast, there's a safety feature in this machine that at 320 degrees, it will kick off. So what we actually want to do is to manipulate our heating element, because we don't want the Behmore just to cut power. We're building and building and building synergy. If we just pull the rug out, it might stall the coffee out. So we need to watch our temperature very closely. When this gets up to about 312, 315, I'm going to just drop it down to half power, let it kind of ease its way up to 320 in hopes that it doesn't, kick off. When it gets to about 1530, the exhaust fan's going to kick on, and then we won't really have to worry about it getting any hotter because that exhaust fan's going to cool the machine down quite a bit. But I'm going to push P3 on our machine and just make sure we slow this down so it doesn't get up to 320. And then once it gets right around 1530, we'll kick it back on. We should be in good shape. Lost a little bit of synergy there. I mean, we just don't want this number like dropping drastically. Our exhaust fan just kicked on. Throw the external exhaust on. Clean things up a little bit. We're at 318, 320. Kick it up to that 320 is kind of a bummer because it essentially kind of takes. We could really start doing some nice profiling on this Behmore if it didn't cut out at 320. But like I said, the chaff is just floating around in there, so you don't want to get too hot because it does become a little bit of a fire risk. We got some early first pops going on. So that's first crack. We did so in about 9 minutes. Slow the drum down. We're just going to let it kind of just ease into its first crack. We're looking for about a 45-second development time here. And we'll cool it down. Get our external cooling tray ready here. And we're going to let this cool for about 30 seconds in effort to get some of the chaff to push down just a little bit. There's a fan blowing in there now. And you want to be very quick about this. And remember how I said you want to be very quick? Well, that's not what I had in mind. I had mine. Helps if you put the mitts on. And as you can see, we're able to get a nice medium light roast there. So definitely works a lot better when you reduce the amount. The preheat, we were able to get this up to first crack by about 8.5, 9 minutes. It just tastes a lot more vibrant than the other coffee because we were able to get it to first crack about 6 minutes sooner. So there are some hacks you can make on it. It's like anything. I've made some of the best coffee I've ever drank in this machine here. The problem is it's really, really hard to do a lot of reproduction. So you kind of just do it what you can with the Behmore when you roast with it. It's kind of like everyone asks me, can you become a great roaster on a Behmore? You can roast great coffee. And if you're the person who roasted that coffee, you're a great roaster. But I kind of liken it to if you never cooked before and you only had a microwave and you learn how to cook every single meal on the microwave, eventually you would figure out how to cook some really amazing meals on a microwave. But you would be limited to the microwave, and a microwave doesn't really give you, the real dynamic of how food cooks and, all how flavor develops. Same thing with a roaster. You're kind of limited, but you can get some great coffee out of it if you kind of learn how the machine acts and how, where the good coffee is coming from. I moved up to this machine because I wanted to get a little bit more variables, a little bit more control, in order so I could have a better understanding of roasting. Now, the flip side of that, could a professional roaster use this machine? Absolutely. They could, because they understand how coffee roasts, they could use this, they could use a pan. They're better able to anticipate. And that's what I kind of wanted as a roaster. I wanted to, go through more of coffee's stages, see all the different dynamics of it so that I'd be able to better anticipate how coffee behaves. But that's not to say I haven't made some of the best coffee I ever drank on this machine. JD Richards, good to see you, man. How you doing? How you been? To see you in the chat. Just doing something over here on YouTube. As in the streaming community, as a super small streamer, you kind of start wondering, would there be more success on YouTube? Would there be more success on Twitch? Obviously, I'm just now becoming comfortable on Twitch, and full disclosure, I would love it. I love streaming on Twitch. It's easy. I'm comfortable. I've got about 10. We average about 10 people in, and that's bigger than I ever thought. But I do realize the space for growth that YouTube is because there's just so many more home roasters, and I want to make sure that not only do we have a cool streaming show, but that we're reaching as much of the home roasting community as we possibly can. Because really, that's what I got into this to do, is to connect with home roasters, so I could answer questions, but more importantly, so that we could kind of share information together. And that's kind of the dream. And I think YouTube does provide a little bit of an avenue for that. I just have to find the balance. So it might be the case that we start, just streaming both. I think my show works a little bit better on Twitch. So if you've not followed us on Twitch yet, come on over to Twitch, where we roast, talk, chat, laugh. Hell, I'll even play a video game or two every now and then. But it's been fun. I will probably, I'm not sure if I'm going to post this onto YouTube, the whole video. I might chop it up a little bit, but we'll see. But thank you for your time. Have a nice night, and I'll see you guys next time.